Hello everyone, welcome to the Hip Tranquil Chick 13th birthday party celebration. I'm so excited to be here with you tonight, and I just wanted to remind you to please grab your book, Hip Tranquil Chick, and then of course also to grab your workbook. KimberlyWilson.com/HTC will get it for you. And then you'll have everything that you need. Hello, Carrie. Hello, Priscilla. Welcome, you guys. Chizuka from Tokyo. Hi, Jessica. I'm so happy to have you. Julie, Denise. Oh my gosh, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I'm so excited. Jennifer, hello, hello. And yeah, so you will want to just grab your Hip Tranquil Chick book if you have it, and your workbook. And if you don't have access to it yet, it is KimberlyWilson.com/HTC, and then you will have everything that you need. And then also, something to write with, always helpful, always good. And then of course, a cup of tea or whatever you may be wanting to sip on a Sunday night. All right, so I'm going to go through a little bit about what are we doing? What's the agenda tonight? So first of all, what I would love is if you would head on over into the chat box, which is really the comment box here for Facebook, and if you would share where you are tuning in from. And then also, what is your favorite chapter? I love knowing things along those lines. Like, what is your favorite chapter? And what is it that you are kind of most excited about hearing about? Thank you to everyone who took a moment and had a moment to write in the survey, like what it is that you are struggling with, or what it is that you're most curious about right now. And I am trying to kind of weave all of that into tonight's celebration. And I mean, let's be honest. Can you believe 13 years? Like, how in the world did that happen? So yeah, if you would just share over in the comment box, name, where are you checking in from? And then also, do you have a favorite chapter from Hip Tranquil Chick? And you may recall there are 12, ranging from yoga on the mat, of course there were 3 of those, to 9 that are yoga off the mat. All right, so what is Hip Tranquil Chick? What is Tranquility du Jour? So some of you may be podcast listeners from back in the day. So when I started the podcast in 2005, a year before this book came out, it was Hip Tranquil Chick. That was the podcast. Well, now it's transitioned into Tranquility du Jour. And so the idea behind Tranquility du Jour is, how do we find more tranquility in our everyday? And some of you, again, have been around since the early days. And I'm so, so grateful to still have you with us. And then also, some of you are brand new. You may have just found out about Tranquility du Jour this week. So a big, big welcome. And what we're going to be doing tonight is we're going to be going through, talking a little bit about some of the highlights from the book that I was thinking may be helpful for you with regard to where you're most struggling right now, because there's some really great tips in this book, even though it is 13 years old. Also, we're going to be doing a giveaway, so I would love it if you would share photos from tonight. Maybe you with your book, maybe you watching, maybe you with your workbook, maybe you with your pup, your tea, whatever it is. And if you will do it by midnight tonight, I'm going to be going in and choosing someone early in the morning who has shared a photo and hashtagged Tranquility du Jour. Okay, so if you could do it on Instagram or Facebook, and I'll just kind of go through, find one of you, and then you're going to get a free daybook. Voila! I'll be sending one of these your way via snail mail, which isn't snail mail like still so much fun, right? Also, if you have any questions or comments, of course, throughout, please share them over in the comment box. I'm going to be going back and forth and doing what I can to stay connected with that, while also teaching and kind of going through the programming. And then also, if you have any tech issues, anything that kind of comes up, one thing that might be really helpful for you is just to like refresh, always seems to be helpful. And then two, I'm going to post this over on YouTube next week. And so if you miss any of it, no worries, I will have it for you. And also, just a little sneak peek, this week I'm also going to be sharing a 20-minute Tea with Kimberly video that I recorded while I was in Paris. And it talks about how do you set up your own kind of excursion away? Because I think for a lot of people, traveling solo can be very scary. So I just kind of walk you through my process and then give you a taste of what my Paris experience was like at the end of the summer. All right, so just a little sneak peek of that. So our agenda tonight, we're going to do a little bit of centering, of course, because that's what we do with Tranquility du Jour stuff. And then we're going to do a little reflection, and hopefully you had time to look at page 3 in your workbook and to do a little bit of reflection around these questions. So we'll do a little bit of dialoguing with that. Then I'm going to talk through lessons learned and HTC grows up, along with some of the highlights. And then finally, what's next? Like, where do we go from here? And I'm curious if any of you were around and involved in HTC 10. So that was an event that I did here in my home, and then of course an online event. And then I wrote a whole new chapter for Hip Tranquil Chick. That was basically, I don't know, you could think of it like an epilogue of like Hip Tranquil Chick 10 years later. So I'm curious too, if any of you who are on here tonight were part of that. So let me head on over into the comment box and then just see who all is here. All right, we have Natalie, Michelle, hello, Selena, hello, darling, Sherry, Jane, Jamie, Kat, Lynn, oh my gosh, hello from Denver, Cindy, New Zealand, my goodness, Philly, okay. Chapter 6, Creative Connection. Nydia, that is her favorite. Hello from Southern Nevada, Miss Karen. Ontario, hello there. Tennessee, Midwest. Hello, Latoya from DC. Self-nurturing survival, I need it the most. You know what's really interesting, Selena, is that is something that a lot of people wrote in the survey. It seems to be, I think, something, I mean, honestly, can't we always use more of that? But I'm with you, honey. I think that's a big piece. New Jersey, New York, Tokyo, of course, my love, Shizuka, Seattle. We've got hello, Tammy from Seattle, a few from Seattle, Debbie from Long Island, chapter 8, as is chapter 10. Thank you, Sherry. It's always interesting to know which ones really resonate. Self-nurturing survival, financial finesse. You know, that was interesting too. That was something that came up a lot in the survey was budgeting, which I thought was really interesting. It was a common theme. I'll mention some of the common themes. I was blown away so much that was very similar among a lot of you. Yes, I know, Robin, can you believe 13 years? Hello, Hillary and Catherine. Refined relations. Denise, you know, the thing that's coming up around that is, of course, the holidays are approaching. And the holidays can be tough for a lot of people with regard to family and the age-old question of like, so when are you getting married? What about that baby? You know, or whatever it is, those questions that come up. So that is a good one to always circle back to, particularly this time of the year. Hello, Mama Wilson from Oklahoma. You still have the notes and info from 2010. I love that. Deborah from Asheville. Visionary value. And you know, that was another piece, Julie, that came up for a lot of people was, what is my dream? How do I get clear on that? How do I get clarity? So I love that visionary value really resonates with you because that is one that seems to be quite big. Wasn't the extra chapter a PDF? Ah, yes, Misty, it was. And it was called HTC 10. And it's still available for download over at KimberlyWilson.com. I think it's /books, but yeah, it was. And it was like, it's pretty long, actually. It was a lot of writing, but from 2016. So thank you guys so much. I love seeing everybody over here. We have another person from Tokyo, and hello, Lisa from LA, and Signature Style. I mean, what's not to love, right, about Signature Style? But that also was another thing that came up for quite a few of you of like, how do I find my signature style? How do I get clear on it? So again, thank you guys so much for being here. A reminder, your workbook is over at KimberlyWilson.com/HTC. And then also, I'm just so grateful that you're here. All right, so let's take a moment to get centered and make sure you've got everything you need in front of you. I encourage you to close down all those other tabs and see what you can do to really like drop in and be right here. Okay, so maybe hands on thighs if that's comfortable. Maybe you can bring hand on heart, hand on belly, whatever kind of feels best to you. And if you'd like, take a moment to close your eyes and let's just drop into tonight's experience, taking a big inhale and exhale out of the nose. And bringing to mind, if you filled out the survey, what it is that you had mentioned, that you're most wanting to gain or that you most need right now. And if you didn't have time to fill out the survey, no worries. Just thinking kind of with all the lessons from Hip Tranquil Chick, or even if you haven't read the book, but you are curious about it, just thinking of what is it that you most need right now. And what would you like to gain from this hour together? And also, how would you most like to show up for these last 2 months of 2019? Can you believe it? Let's inhale and reach the arms out to the sides, all the way up. Bring the arms above the head, interlace your hands, turn palms to face up. Let's do a nice big stretch. Yay, and then a side bend over to your left, opening the eyes if you'd like. Extending, feels so good. And then over to the other side. And then right back up. Nice, and release. So roll those shoulders back and forward a few times. And if you'd like, if you want to get really nostalgic, pull out the sequence from Hip Tranquil Chick and do that after our gathering. Okay, so what I want to do to start is read the definition of Hip Tranquil Chick, and it is on page 2 of the book for those of you who have it. And I remember that I really kind of struggled with this because I think for a lot of people, there was this feeling of like, well, I'm not hip, or, why do you have to be hip to enjoy this or be part of this? And, for me, it wasn't, I didn't want people to feel like excluded, right, in any way. And so that's why I did this definition, actually. It's like, okay, this is what hip means. And I even referenced my grandmother in it. And then chick, I think a lot of people had an issue with that word. It's like, oh, like chicklet was a big thing back in 2006. And, so it's just one of those things where it's like it didn't resonate, right, with everyone. And so I didn't want people to feel like, oh, I'm not part of this if I don't like the word hip, or I don't feel like I'm hip, or if I don't feel like I wouldn't call myself a chick. And it's funny because I wouldn't really call myself a chick. I don't think I ever really have, but I like how hip blank chick kind of works together. Anyway, there were all sorts of books around here, like the Hip Chick's Guide to Macrobiotics, the Hip Chick's Guide to Homemaking, like all sorts of really fun things. Okay, so the Hip Tranquil Chick, again, this is on page 2. Yoga is a lifestyle full of mean reds, and I'm curious if you all know what mean reds is. Breakfast at Tiffany's is your first hint, but I am curious if you all know that, because I think some people are like, what are mean reds? Paramars and deep twists. So Hip Tranquil Chickness is a movement to live in a way that shines. After all, it's why we are here, to shine as brightly and boldly as possible. The mission of a Hip Tranquil Chick is to incorporate hipness and tranquility into all aspects. All right, so here is where I define it. Okay, so hip is your external presentation, right? So this is your fun, your fashion, kind of being frivolous, right? Hip, like it doesn't mean like, oh, I have all the latest clothes or handbag or any of that. It's more of like, how do you show up? Is there a sense of like an effervescence about you? Tranquil, all right, so we may have that effervescence. However, we are still grounded. And that's your internal world, right? It's really the savvy substance behind the style. And then chick is your energy, your joie de vivre, right? So chick is more like an energy. So I say the Hip Tranquil Chick is a swanky girl on the go, looking for some tranquility along the way. She juggles a busy life with grace, lives her practice, makes time for thoughtful gestures, gives of her resources, lights up a room with her presence. She lives in a mindful, conscientious manner that helps spread true tranquility. She's the girl we aspire to be. So one thing I always kind of wanted to emphasize, because I feel like this was a little misconstrued, is sometimes people would come up to me and be like, oh, Hip Tranquil Chick, as if like this was me. So this is what I aspire aspire to be. So it was never like, oh, I'm the hip Tranquil chick and this is how you do it because I have it all figured out. So it always kind of made me cringe when people were like, oh, you're the hip Tranquil chick. It was like, no, I wrote the book and I'm really trying to live these lessons. So yeah. And then so the next piece I wanted to mention is if you go over onto page 7 of your book, again, if you have it, if not, I'm going to read it, no worries. The Hip Tranquil Chick Manifesto. Okay, so what I am curious about is there anything from here? Oh, Nydia, if it's not working for you, do KimberlyWilson.com/HTC lowercase, and we'll get the uppercase one going also. So Tim will do that. He's on it right now. So yeah, if you'll just do, type in KimberlyWilson.com/lowercase HTC. Sorry about that. Who knew that this would be sensitive? It shouldn't be, but sometimes it is. So sorry, Nydia. And also everyone, just so you know, if for any reason you can't access something, I also put it over in the Facebook group and on the Facebook invite, okay? But don't worry, we'll get this fixed for you right now. And sorry about that uppercase, lowercase issue. All right, so Hip Tranquil Chick Manifesto, page 7. So I wrote this as like, okay, how can I pull together something that would kind of encompass the entire essence of Hip Tranquil Chick, right? So what I did is create a manifesto. And what I love about manifestos is in Tranquility Salon, which is an online program I just recently offered, and a big thank you to so many of you who joined me for that. We created our very own manifesto. And what I think about manifestos is honestly, they can change every single day, meaning that, you know, one day you may be like, oh, this is really important to me, or no, this is actually priority. Because I'll tell you, since these 2 books came out, let me just show you. So this book came out in January, had a manifesto in it. And then this book came out in June, had an updated manifesto in it. Okay, that was a matter of like 5 or 6 months. And so manifestos always kind of evolving as we evolve. So here was the Hip Tranquil Chick Manifesto. Live fully, seek serenity, laugh often, tread mindfully, savor simplicity, love passionately, think globally, exude creativity, and treasure tranquility. So as a Hip Tranquil Chick, I, and then blank, promise to create a vision for my life, which again, I heard some of you that this is a piece that you're struggling with. And you know, I think one thing to keep in mind is because our vision constantly evolves, just like our manifesto. Nourish my inner artist through constant creativity. And I just did a TV episode just this past week, and you can find it over on YouTube. It's youtube.com/tranquility du jour, where I share some ideas on how creativity can actually help us de-stress. Who knew, right? Breathe through challenges, not always easy to remember. Consciously carve my career path. Host savvy soirees to expand my community. Mindfully manage my money. Design an oasis to nurture my soul at home and work. Indulge in socially conscious actions. I have a lot of stuff here. Exude my signature style with a dash of flair. Challenge myself daily. Seek opportunity and express gratitude. Serve as an inspiration to others. Nurture my relationships daily. Surround myself with candles, flowers, and positive pals. Nourish my body with oodles of water, fresh fruit, and whole grains. Schedule herbal tea sipping, bathtub soaking, and journal writing. Find inspiration in the mundane and practice yoga gracefully on and off the mat. I mean, that is so aspirational, isn't it? And of course, we can't do all of this all the time. And yet the one thing that I will say I heard from a lot of you is that there are certain pieces that you're kind of most needing or most curious about. Is relationships, finances, weight and food, and vision for your life, and self-care. I'd say those were the big themes that really came out of this experience. This is what it was that it seemed like people were most needing. And so with that, what I want to do is talk through a few of the, set my book over there, a few of the Hip Tranquil Chick highlights. So if you, actually, let's do reflection first. Sorry about that. I got a little excited. So let's turn to page 3 and then we'll go into highlights. So page 3 is your reflection. And don't worry if you don't have this, I will talk you through what these questions are. But I am just kind of curious what came up for you. Okay, so number 1, what most resonates with me about Hip Tranquil Chick? So, I have heard from a lot of you, and I tell you, it means so much to me because, I wrote this book 13 years ago. Well, I really wrote it 14 years ago, but it came out 13 years ago. And so it's hard to remember kind of the impact that it had. This was kind of pre-social media. I mean, maybe there was Facebook, but no one's really using it. I think there was Friendster. Some of you may remember Friendster. But it's, all these different pieces. There's been such an evolution, I think, on how life has changed and evolved. So I'm curious for you, what most resonates with you about this book? Number 2, which of the 12 topics do I most need right now? Number 3, what own work would I like to revisit and incorporate? And if some of you are like, what was own work? So at the end of every chapter, I had suggestions on own work. So I'll give an example. Creativity. Make a list of 25 things you must do before you die. Vow to express your creative and artistic self every day. And carve out at least 4 hours each month for creative expression. All right, so own work. Were there any pieces from the own work that you're like, this really resonates? Number 4, does the manifesto, which was on page 7 in the book, still resonate with me? And if not, what change would I make? And then number 5, how has the book changed for me as I've gotten older? So one thing too that I heard from a lot of you that I really liked was like, okay, what is it that you change or shift as you get older, right? So clearly 13 years older. And what has been that evolution? I really like that question. Now, some of you may have come to Hip Tranquil Chick just a few years ago. So you may be like, what are they talking about? But if you think about it, how do we age kind of gracefully along with the book? And so I'm curious, would you all share over in the comment box any of the answers that you have to these questions? And again, it's number 1, what most resonates with you? Number 2, which of the 12 topics do you need most right now? Like, are you like, oh my God, financial finesse, or oh my God, refined relations, or like really what I need more of? Number 3, what own work would I like to revisit and incorporate? And I just read to you the creativity own work, which I think is really good and good to remember. Number 4 is, does the manifesto still resonate with me? And that's what I just read to you. So I'm curious, does that still resonate? Are you like, no, I would completely rewrite it. And then number 5, and this one I'm very curious about, how has this book changed for you as you have gotten older? So if you will share over in the comment box, and as you're doing that, I will circle back and see what you had to say. So with regard to the highlights, so this is our next page, which is page 4, our HTC highlights. So one of the things that you guys mentioned definitely was visioning. This was another thing, like your surroundings, soulful surroundings. A lot of people asked about transitions, right? So transitioning careers seem to be hot on a lot of your minds. Stretching your dollar, again, the financial piece. And then also signature style, and then your surroundings, which and self-care. Like, these were the big themes. So I just wanted to touch on a few of these because I think some of these pieces are somewhat timeless. So if you'll turn to page 62 to 65, which is the visioning, because again, a lot of you were asking about, okay, what do I do with regard to clarity or, figuring out like, what is it I want? And so I wanted to remind you about these questions on page 63 that I thought might be helpful with this. So visualization and the idea of like, okay, what is it I want? How do I bring that forth? What do I most want or need in my life right now? And, if you scroll kind of down, it's like number 7, what is your typical day like? Number 10, How do you care for yourself during the day? Like, these are very specific questions, but for you, it might be helpful to grab some magazines and do a little bit of art journaling. And what that is taking images, creating a collage, and then writing over it. What do you notice? Well, the theme is it's a very organized space, or it's incredibly healthy food, or it's me and a partner, and I don't have a partner yet, so I see that that's actually something that I want. So things along those lines, right? Where you're like, what is the vision for my future? And honestly, even though I'm like, oh, it's super simple, it's not. I think this is incredibly hard, and yet it's worth your time and attention. And I just wanted to mention these pages 62 to 65 because I was hoping it might actually be helpful. Okay, so let's look at pages 76 and 77. So this is our friend self-care. So this was something I definitely heard from a lot of you, which was, how do I make time for myself? And what's interesting, I was thumbing through Hip Tranquil Chick. I'm like, I don't really have much on time management. So I am going to share with you some things that I'm like, this was missed in the book, and this would be in like 2.0 if I ever did another one. But it was really, you guys were really big on needing more time for yourselves. And I have a self-care checklist that I've put into these two books, and I think it might also be over in Tranquil Treasures. And so Tranquil Treasures is that multimedia resource kind of library. For anyone who signed up for my newsletter, you have access to it. You've got the password and everything. And if you're not, just sign up at KimberlyWilson.com/lovenotes, and then you'll get the password. Then you can access all of this. But the thing about self-care is we've got to set a time for it. And it could be as simple as like, I'm going to start my day sitting down and having a cup of tea, right? So something very small, but it's your time. And I think that self-care can be like, oh, I need a day to go to the spa or to get my nails done. It's like so much more than that. And it really is about tuning in and noticing, what do I need most right now? So I have some ideas here, and they range from indulging in weekly solo excursions, which I always love to do. As an introvert, I'm always like, I love doing solo things. Hosting a solo girls' night in, meditating. At this time, I was doing events at my home, like girls' events at my home. And so I was really big on that. And now that we have like 3 dogs and a cat, and we live in 600 square feet, and I have a partner, it's like there's no space, and there's black hair everywhere. Get moving. Of course, that's really helpful. Some of you also mentioned anxiety and depression and how to work with that. And get moving and meditate are 2 kind of big pieces that can be really helpful with that. That's another thing that I realized was not touched on in Hip Tranquil Chick really is mental health. So self-care, I just wanted to point these out because these are simple ways to soothe your soul. And honestly, it's like we need simple, right? We're not looking for some massive, massive plan. The next piece is, a lot of you talked to transitions, and specifically it was career transitions. Everyone who reached out and mentioned that. And it's like, how do you do it? How do you navigate it? And let me just tell you, having made a very big career transition, having founded and owned a yoga studio for 18 years, sold it 2 years ago, like it's been a massive life transition, right? And so I do have a lot to say about transitions. And those of you who listen to the podcast, you may have noticed I've been interviewing quite a few people about transitions because I do think it's such an important piece. But with regard to kind of career in general, if you look on page 109, what makes you tick? I love these questions because I think they can be really helpful to check it and ask yourself, like, what is it that is most resonating with me, or that I most want, or what is it I don't want? And I tell you, that is so important because a lot of times we focus on, oh, this is what I want, and yet it seems so far away, and yet I have everything else still on my plate. Well, what is it you don't want, and how can you let that go? So on this page, what makes you tick? Number 1, review all your former jobs, and then note what you liked and didn't like. Number 2, working from your to list, write out your ideal job description for your perfect role. Now, honestly, since this book has come out too, there is so much more entrepreneurship. I think people really creating their own jobs and their own careers, their own paths. Number 3, what do you love to do in your free time? Number 4, if you had an unlimited supply of money and didn't need to work, what would you do with your time? And then number 5, ask your family and friends what they see as your strengths and weaknesses. Because I'll tell you, it's hard to see your own. If you're like, what are my strengths? Well, I'm nice. It's like, no, really, like, what are you good at? Where do you shine? And then where do you struggle? And it's so helpful to know that as we think career. So page 120, well, let me just head on over into the comment box. I see there's a bunch of them and I just don't want to miss any of you. Sherry, financial finesse resonates. Karen, add to the manifesto, curate time in nature. Oh my gosh, yes. And Michelle, what resonates with me, I found the book in 2011 or 2012 when I was looking for books to take my yoga off the mat. What strikes me about this book is that it's a classic because it's about intentional living or mindful living. Oh, good. Thank you. Kathy. How has the book changed for me as I've gotten older? It makes me realize that I shouldn't wait to make changes. Amen. I think that's so important. Latoya, when I found HTC 11 years ago, I didn't feel control of my life. I just love that really serene, intentional view on life design. I hadn't heard of it at that point, but HTC put me on the path. And now, Latoya, look at you. Those of you who listen to the podcast, you may have heard it was a phenomenal podcast. I have to say so. And it's because of Latoya, but it was all about race and it was so good. And Latoya, when did that come out? It's probably 3 or 4 months ago. Anyway, I think it's one of the best podcasts that I've put out. And it's with this lovely lady. Karen, I love all the chapters. Yay, Karen. Nydia, manifesto still resonates. Find the inspiration in the mundane. Movements in yoga as I age. Yes. Financial finesse, soulful surroundings. Actually getting back on the mat. Always good. Foundation of all areas. Chapter 4. What is chapter 4? I'm like, because if it's the foundation, I want to make sure. Let's see. Oh, visionary value. Yes. HTC reassigned my love of leopard print and pink. Yay. I mean, and don't you love it? It is so back right now. It's like everywhere. Misty, I tricked myself into decluttering. I call it self-care. It is self-care, really. It is. I mean, because whenever you set up your environment in a way that resonates with your soul, it makes a difference. I tell you, whenever, like, my desk is very cleared off right now because I had a photo shoot kind of earlier today. And so I was like, I can't have all these books, like 3 stacks of books and paperwork. So it's all over here on the couch, but my desk, it just feels so light and airy, even though I know I still need to tackle this stuff. So I do think it's self-care. Karen, you now schedule self-care. I like that. Latoya, actually great to see how far I've come. Absolutely. And you have come very far. It was summer. Thank you, Latoya. Yeah, so cool. Thank you guys for sharing over there. So the next piece I wanted to mention, page 120. So if you turn to page 120, and you know what's so funny? Look at this. So I have this, you'll see right here, circled. Lifestyle was misspelled. Never caught. You see, I haven't let that go. So never caught. And I circled it with a check mark. I was like, no. So the book actually was picked up by a publisher out of Hawaii. And then they sold all of their books to New World Library out of California, who's phenomenal, who put out my second book, Tranquilista. Anyway, I think when they did a reprint, I don't know that they did corrections on typos. I'm not sure. Thank goodness there were just a few of them, but yeah, you see, I've let that go. All right, so stretching your dollar. So you know what's really interesting about this, and again, because some of you mentioned this being something that you were interested in paying more attention to, I'm trying to do like, okay, say you have an old habit of like dining out, like, it's amazing what we can spend on food. Going out to eat. So I have a new habit, maybe just joining friends for drinks and dinner and what you can save doing things like that. Eating out for lunch. What if you packed your lunch? Even like your tea or your morning coffee, having it, creating it at home, you get exactly what you want and then taking it with you. So it's amazing how these things add up. But, I'm sure this chapter could be so updated because we have so much more information. And now there's the big movement, right, around financial independence, like Mr. Money Mustache. Some of you may be familiar with him. So much good stuff out there. So the last 2 I wanted to touch on simply because you mentioned these in your survey as pieces that you were wanting a little bit more help with. So if you turn to the signature style chapter, and particularly page 138, I just want to read a piece from this because, somebody had asked, like, how do I find my signature style, or how do I figure out what it is? So Signature Style 101. It's true. Others will form their first impression of you within a few seconds. Isn't that wild? By taking an active role in the image you project, you exude your most fabulous self while staying true to who you are. To ensure your signature style comes from a place of authenticity, stay mindful of how you walk into a room, observe how you conduct yourself in meetings and interviews, ensure you live passionately in your daily life, and let it flow on the yoga mat. Embodying a style that projects your personality is sure to have a positive effect on how you feel about yourself and how others perceive you. Build on your assets by emphasizing your uniqueness. Like if you're tall, wear those heels, right? And that's exactly what I say here. That's funny. You may be 6 feet tall and in love with stilettos or platinum blonde and wear all white. Let these unique styles share a story with others about who you are. That's funny. I didn't remember that. Celebrate your differences. Enjoy what makes you unique. Play it up and revel in your own personal style. And this is something too, now there's so many wonderful things out there on developing your signature style. And, so one of you asked like on doing more writing, like, I'd like something on that. And I do have that kind of on my radar for 2020. So stay tuned because I'd like to do something with that with regard to tranquility. And then the last thing I want to touch on, simply because this came up a bit, is soulful surroundings. So if you turn to page 143, habitat must-haves. So of course I touch on all the senses and I just kind of wanted to go through them a little bit with you. So smell, like right now I have got a candle burning and I've got my diffuser going with lemongrass. So smell, very, very important to me. Also my tea is quite fragrant. It's a detox tea because I've been sustaining myself on a lot of pizza, which I'm not proud of. But so I was like, detox. It's got like lemon and ginger, so it has a nice aroma. Sights, so lots of live greenery. And you know what I love is that plants are now the hip thing. They are so in. There are plant stores everywhere. It's like people talk about their plant babies. It's so fun. So sight, just thinking about like, what is it that is beautiful to you? Touch. So I love soft things. So faux fur. I have silks here. I would not recommend silks now. Egyptian cotton, other divine fabrics. So Chanel throws, rugs, etc. Sound. So wind chimes, a crackling fire. We had a fire going earlier. It got so hot because the fireplace is like right here. But oh my gosh, I love it. And then I have here jazz. And I tell you, I have recently become a huge lover of jazz. And then taste. So fresh fruit in a wicker basket or ceramic bowl, clear mason jars filled with nuts and grains. So just thinking about, okay, like what are the different senses and how are they resonating with me now? Do I have enough in my life, or does it feel like, it's all sight and it's all clutter, right? So what can you do? Because sometimes too, if you're just like, oh my gosh, it's a busy time, everything's out of whack, the laundry's overflowing. It's like little things like lighting a candle, getting a new plant, I feel like can make a big difference in like calming and grounding. And honestly, data does show, the studies do show that flowers and plants actually make people happier. So they'll do studies in office environments and things along those lines. So those were some just Hip Tranquil Chick highlights that I wanted to point out that touch on, look at everything I wrote from all of your wonderful survey responses on what it was that you wanted help with. And I just kind of tried to pull those together, pulling from Hip Tranquil Chick. Now, with that said, let's talk Hip Tranquil Chick grows up. So turn to page 5 in your workbook, if you will. And I'm curious, is everyone still with me? Are you guys enjoying this? Let me know. Just head on over into the comment box. Would love to hear. I'm so grateful that you guys are here with me tonight. I really, really appreciate it. I wish you were all like here, like hanging out in my my condo. So what has changed in 13 years? So what has changed? When Hip Tranquil Chick released in 2006, I was 33 years old, self-employed yoga studio owner, in love with a nonprofit attorney, Tim, he's still here, still around, and a pet parent. I dreamt of taking our newly formed nonprofit, which was Tranquil Space Foundation globally. I was like, it's going to be the next Girl Scouts because it was all focused on teen girls, yoga, creativity, and leadership. And then Hip Tranquil Chick, I feel like this was kind of like my coming out as an author, right? Lover of pink and leopard prints, a proponent of kitten heels, which now, like, as you get older, you get all sorts of things. I have this like weird neuroma, and there's no way I could wear anything that squeezes my toes like that. So now I'm a Swedish clogs kind of girl. And my vision was to spread the message that yoga wasn't just poses on a sticky mat. But what I didn't know at that time was that my life would become so much more than yoga. So right when the studio turned 10, I was like, okay, what is next for me? And it wasn't like, oh, because I'm getting out of the studio. It was like, what do I want next that's going to challenge me? And then I went back to grad school to get my degree in social work because I'd always wanted to do therapy. And I'll pour a little more tea. And honestly, I kind of felt like, truthfully, that yoga was a bit of therapy for people. It really is, but it just wasn't talk therapy. Now, in the past 13 years, okay, what has happened? Oh my gosh, so much. First Black president, yay, Obama. Major party nominates a female candidate, Hillary. Marriage equality. Growing awareness of non-binary genders, plant-based meats everywhere. Hello, Impossible Whopper at Burger King. I even just saw on Facebook earlier today that Tyson's is coming out with a plant-based meat that looks like beef in a little styrofoam container. Like, I love this. I signed a $2 million lease to grow Tranquil Space. Oh my God. And then we had the biggest economic crash since the Great Depression. I had 2 surgeries to repair injuries. I lost Louis the pug, which is, okay, I do love my Tim, but I have to say I think this guy was the love of my life. Sorry, Tim, you're great, but this guy was like everything. So heartbreaking. I also lost my beloved grandma, who was also the love of my life. I sold Tranquil Space to YogaWorks. I stopped teaching regular yoga classes. I fed street dogs and cows in India, transitioned nonprofits to Pigs and Pugs Project, which I'm obsessed with both beings, launched my psychotherapy practice, and adopted 3 rescue pugs. So past 13 years, right? Lots of change, lots has happened, and lots has happened globally too. It's like amazing. So with that said, and let me head over into the comments. Love this. Yay. Yes, I wish you were there too. Yes, Laura. Yes, I wish you were here. Michelle, love, you still here. Yay, Misty, I'm so glad. Wish I was there too. So glad, you guys. Always love these gatherings. I'm totally loving this. I need to reread Hip Tranquil Chick again and enjoying it. I always love this first book. You know, Helen, it's so funny. As I was going through this and preparing for tonight, I said to Tim, I'm like, this is actually a really good book. And, you know, you forget, right? You wrote it 14 years ago and you're kind of like, you know, I don't really refer to it much. I mean, I did for HTC 10, but there's just so much good material in here, but it all is like touching on the surface of so many things. So it's like, man, we could go so much deeper with so much of this. So what's missing from Hip Tranquil Chick? Okay, and this is me looking at it with a lens of 13 years later, right? Okay, time management. This was something that you guys mentioned was you were quite curious about more time management tools and how to get everything done and feeling overwhelmed. And I think everyone probably who is watching this tonight can relate to that. So I was like, I need more of that in there. And I have a lot of great resources for it now. And if you guys have listened to the 168 Hours podcast, I have a lot of really great stuff out there. And then also, of course, in these books, you know, the idea of looking at your 168 hours. And I even interviewed the woman who wrote 168 Hours. But I've got this idea, right, of looking at, okay, where does your time go? Your current and then where you want it to go. And, getting clear. And I feel like that's step 1 of time management. But there's so many amazing tools out there. And again, I don't think I touched on it. And I'm like, it's an important piece. And one other piece that came out of Tranquility Salon that people seem to really like that I wanted to mention was this idea of when you say yes to one thing, like you're like, sure, I'll take on that volunteer opportunity, or sure, I'll make that dress, whatever it is. It's like you're saying no to something else. And unfortunately, that no is often ourselves, right? Because we're making other people or things a priority. Okay, sometimes we have to do that, but I think if you really want self-care, it's like, how do you make sure that what you're saying yes to, you really want to say yes to? Okay, so that's time management. Again, missing, so much more can be said. You're owning your own business. So I touched on it a little bit in the career chapter, and I touch on it a lot in Tranquilista, my second book, but I feel like there's so much more that could be done there because so many people have their own businesses now. It's so much more normal than it was back in '06. And, it's like I used to like HTML code my website, right? Now people can like design their own websites in a night, not using HTML code. So just the evolution of things, I think, has been so big. So a little bit more on entrepreneurship, I think, would have been helpful, because one of the things I heard from a lot of you was like, how do I wear all these different hats? Or how do I transition from corporate into doing my freelance work full time, right? So talking a little bit more about that. I do feel like there's a lot of good fodder in Tranquilista, but again, that book is 9 years old. So there's so much more that could be written. Minimalism, missing. Social media management, missing, because there really wasn't social media. So I wanted to recommend a book that if you have not read this, I think you might love it. Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. This book is freaking amazing with regard to social media, really technology management. Another thing is environment. Now, I know I did have a chapter at the end of Hip Tringle Chick, and, I think I tried, right? Savvy social consciousness, expand your global mindset, but there is so much more to be said about this, especially now. And so with that said, this book, and I interviewed her on my podcast, is so good with regard to the environment. Give a shit, do good, live better, save the planet. So good. And like, it's really, really well done. So those are just 2 books I wanted to mention, but I was like, that's missing. Animal rights is missing. Like, I'm pretty sure I talk about vegetarianism in here. But I mentioned silk. Like, no, not good. And then also, I just feel like it's such a big piece of my life now that that is just something that I feel like is missing. And then the last thing I felt like is missing is freaking mental health. Okay. So as a therapist, yes, I can definitely see that. But, the piece about it is, it's not like I want to write a book necessarily on how to work with anxiety and depression, but I do feel like we're so much more aware of and talking about mental health and the importance of it. And I think everyone's I don't know anyone in DC who doesn't deal with anxiety, right? And then we all deal with these things on different levels. And how can we manage it and manage the stress of our day-to-day and the different roles that we have, and still live a beautiful life? I think that that's an important piece that is also missing. Anyway, I just wanted to share that because I was like, I would love to have more of these in there. All right, so we've got 5 Senses. Carrie is a great book. Karen, HCC Timeless Resource for All Women. Thank you. And then listening to you and the reason and contents of the book has made me want to buy another copy. I gave my books to someone I thought needed them. Oh, that's great. Sabrina, thank you for sharing the love. And, somebody said too that maybe they weren't available on Amazon. I'm not sure. I do have a few copies if you want a signed copy, but also my publisher, New World Library, newworldlibrary.com, you can get them from them. Absolutely, mental health. Yes, Selena, it's critical. Okay, so I also just kind of, before we kind of move into wrap up tonight, I wanted to share some of my biggest lessons. And again, I tried to pull from what you all had said were pieces that you were kind of most curious about. And so number 1, let go. So goodbyes are powerful. They're a really important part of the journey. We have to shut doors in order to make space for new doors to open. So let go. When you can no longer show up as your best self, release, okay? Whether or not that's a job, a relationship, whatever. And it doesn't mean like, this just doesn't work anymore, I'm gonna throw in the towel. But using that discernment to recognize when it's time to move on. Not easy. Not easy to be like, I have spent my entire adult life building this business, and yet now I think I need to move on. That's hard. That's a hard decision to make. Number 2, reinvention is key. Transitions are hard, and yet they are powerful. They inform resilience, they make you stronger, and they also don't make everyone happy. That's okay, because it's important that you are doing what you need to do for you. not always easy. Less is more. I put in parentheses, except when it comes to books and clogs. So Tim's laughing. So less is more, right? So that just kind of ties in the principles of minimalism, which I feel like I was much more exposed to after Hip Tranquil Chick. It kind of became really hot, in the early 2000s? No, sorry, the early like 08, 09, 2010. Yeah. So I would say in the past like 10 years, right, it's become really popular. You guys probably know The Minimalists. They're super fun to follow. They have a documentary. Anyway, people are moving into tiny homes, right? Like this whole thing of like downsizing. Compassion is the new black. That's my shirt. And then I just have in parentheses animals. Like, I think recognizing how important, animals have always been so important to me since I was a little girl. I used to have little turtles, and I would have little stockings for them and have Christmas celebrations for them in my room. I was like always a little odd. And, so animals have always been super duper important to me. And then, whenever I met pigs, I it was all over. And so, even though I've been vegetarian probably since like 1999, so what is that, 20 years? But, my passion for animals is just off the charts. And compassion is the new black. Of course, it doesn't just mean animals, but it's also like for you, thinking about how in which we show up in the world and how can we do it in a more compassionate way. And I always love sharing that quote by Plato that's like, be kind because everyone is fighting a hard battle. I'm probably paraphrasing, but I think it's just a great reminder because it's easy to become reactive, especially when you live in cities and you're, triggered with things. Keep this in mind with family during the holidays. Appreciating simple pleasures. Of course, I feel like that's always been important to me, but I've really, I feel like, honed in on this even more. Manage energy. So I am a highly sensitive person. If you guys don't know that, Google it. I'm curious if you are too. And you just Google it and you can take the online quiz. Really interesting stuff. And I think it helps explain why some people are just really more sensitive than others. And it's truly that they are. Like even in, if I have my hair done, I'm always like, you have to be really gentle as you're combing it or whatever, because like even my scalp is super sensitive. It's just all these things. It's like recognizing this is something I have to adjust to. So managing my energy, and I'm also an INFJ, which means that like I'm easily depleted. So all these sorts of things I think are helpful to keep in mind as you're like, what do I want to do with my life? Because if you put yourself out there in a role that you're going to have to be on a lot as an HSP or INFJ, that's tough. I can speak from experience. The last two I want to mention, thoughts are not reality. Okay, this was a big thing. And of course, this would fall under mental health. But thoughts are not reality. To me, that's a little shocking. Positive feedback is like Teflon. It just goes right off. And yet negative feedback is like Velcro. And so I remember I didn't join Goodreads for years because I had read a really negative review of Hip Tranquil Chick on Goodreads. And it basically was like, she was so disgusted by the book that it was like Helen Gurley Brown. And I don't know if you guys remember her, but she was like the Cosmo kind of like editor-in-chief for years. Of course, I read her book like 25 years ago. But anyway, threw up on the book aisle or self-improvement aisle at Target. And I was like so offended by that. I'm like, I'm not joining Goodreads. Okay, right. Yet there's a lot of positive reviews. And what is it that we remember? It's our minds are sticky to negativity. There's a reason for it. It's called negativity bias. I won't go into all that, but it's just interesting. And so it's trying to be less attached to the negatives and not believing everything you think, which is shocking and yet liberating. The last thing that I want to mention on lessons that I'm learning, because I won't say I've learned these, right? I am learning. I continue to learn. I continue to be challenged by all of this every day, just like you, is aging with ease. So what I mean by that is even like today, just feeling like super creaky and I don't see as well anymore. And, there's always some like weird new ailment. And yet, it's like, I am grateful to be alive. But it's just interesting to notice like how, as we get older and things shift, how can we do it? I almost wrote gracefully and then I just switched it because I'm like, I don't know that I'm aging gracefully, right? But with the sense of ease, like, right? Versus, oh my gosh, you won't believe like my knees are creaking or, whatever, which is so easy, I think, to get into that mode. All right, so lessons learning. Now, what I would love if you guys would turn to page 6. And as we think about, okay, tranquility now. So what does tranquility look like to you now? So I shared lessons I'm learning, right? Letting go, reinvention is key, less is more, compassion is the new black, simple pleasures, managing energy, thoughts are not reality, and aging with ease. What are some of your kind of takeaways from tonight that speak to what tranquility might look like for you now? Okay, so if you would share that over in the comment box and then also on your Tranquility Now page. And as you're doing that, what I'm going to do is just share a couple announcements and wait to hear from you. What if you want to release but financially you're in a bind? Oh, Laura, that is a good question. Yeah, and that's where it's a little tricky, right? So what I encourage with things along those lines, and even like say with starting a business, I'm never like leap and the net will appear. I'm always like, put your toe in the water, right? So even with something like this, if it is that you want to make a shift, it's thinking about, okay, how can I do that in stages? Because, just quitting your job and being like, I'm going to figure all this out. I don't know. I think that's a lot of pressure. I've seen people do that. And I've also seen, and I'm proud of them. And yet I've also seen how much they struggle because that space of the unknown is really uncomfortable. And then you have a lot of pressure to build, and build quickly. And so I like the idea, if it's possible, to go down to a 4-day work week, if that's possible, maybe a 3-day work week, working part-time from home as you begin to build into what it is that you're wanting. So for me, again, this was not intentional, but I went back to school at year 10 of the studio, so 2009. That took me 7 years. So it took me 4 years of school, and then it took me 2.5 years to get my licensing hours, right? So it was like 7 years by the time I started school and by the time I got my license. That was 7 freaking years. So it's not like I'm like, oh, I'm going to shut the studio and open up a private practice in psychotherapy. So it was stages and it was a long journey. And I didn't even know that was my ultimate destination. So sometimes it's like just going along and trusting the process. Never easy, never easy. Okay, so first thing I want to mention, save the date, December 29th. So those of you who have either one of these books, and PDFs count, so Year of Tranquility, both of these are on Amazon, and then the latest day book, there is going to be a free event for you on December 29th, and it's like planning 2020 TDJ style. Should be super fun. And the way you'll get an invite is if you've signed up for the bonuses. So the bonuses are found on each of these books pages at KimberlyWilson.com, pretty easy to locate. And then you put in your information to get the bonuses. And then I'm going to use those email addresses in early December and send you guys the YouTube link to join and all that. It'll be super fun. I love doing things like this, particularly as we're looking to the new year. So just save the date for that. Again, if you have these books or if you're interested in them, no pressure if you're not. And then also save the date for the next TDJ Live, right? So TDJ Live is where we get together and we talk about, okay, planting seeds and what are we going to bring forth in the new year? And so that's January 5th, 8 p.m. Sunday night. Seems to work best for most of you. So please save the date. Also, Provence. I am taking a group of people to Provence in May 30th through June 5th, and you are invited. Retreat goes on sale tomorrow, and you can find out more at KimberlyWilson.com/Provence when it goes live. And and just so you know, there are only 14 spots available. So if you want to come, you're going to want to sign up early because this is going to be a very special retreat and my only retreat of 2018. Okay, and then finally, I wanted to ask if you guys have a moment, I'm just trying to see if I have one nearby to show you, but I don't, to pen a review of any of my books on Amazon and to send me the link to it and your snail mail address, I'll send you a sparkly, glittery postcard from Paris. And it would mean a lot to me if you have a moment to do that, and then to share it with me, and then your snail mail address, and then I'll get a little snail mail out to you. I think snail mail is like the most fabulous thing. So if you have a moment to do that, I would be so, so grateful. Okay, so let me just head on over into the comments box. And if you have any questions too, if you're like, what about this with Hip Tranquil Chick? Please let me know, and I'm happy to answer it in our final few minutes together. And again, thank you guys so much for being here. So let me just see what some of your takeaways are. Oh my gosh, lots of them. It's so funny how, like, with the comment box, how things don't really pop up very quickly. Okay. My mind is 25, but thankfully my internal reference book is much larger. Taking time for yourself is not selfish. It is not selfish, and it's necessary. One woman I interviewed on a podcast, Kathy, that I just love sharing this idea is she said your teacup has to be full. And that means like with self-care, good sleep, good food, not a lot of pizza, that whole thing. And then what people get is what overflows from it. Isn't that genius? So you have to make sure this is full, because this is all yours. And then what people get is your like excess, right? I love that. Mama, age gracefully and care about others so I don't look at my aging and whine. Yes. I think that's so important. And you know what? We should be grateful that we're aging, right? So I do think there might be a book coming down the pike as I talk about that. And one other thing too, those of you who have joined the Tranquil book club group, I have a couple questions, and one is your favorite book that I've written. And then second thing is, what would you like to see next that I write? And so I would love it if you guys would share, what is it that you're most interested in? Send me an email. Is it aging gracefully? Like, what is it? Is it Hip Tranquil Chick grows up? I don't know. Let me know. Gratitude for everything, every day, Karen, even the simplest of life's pleasures. Yes, Jane, making so many notes and excited to journal all evening. My mind is full. Thank you. Thank you, Jane. I'm so happy to hear. Do let me know what you share, or what you come up with. And then also a reminder, you guys share photos, hashtag. One time I was at an event and they said pound, mindful summit. It was a mindful summit. And I was like, oh my gosh, Tim and I giggled. We're like pound. So hashtag Tranquil du jour. And please share your photos of your setup and your experience. And you may just win a copy of the daybook. Michelle, knowing that I have less time ahead of me than behind me. Yes, helps me put things in perspective. Turning 40, I know, isn't that? It's like, it's a realization, and yet I think it's really powerful. Accept what is and stop the internal conflict of wishing, fighting for something else. Yes, Karen, so important. Sherry, taking time for self with creativity, tackling my clutter. Oh, yes. And getting more organized and creative in my business. I do talk a bit about tackling clutter. Really, I think it's more about closet cleaning out in this book. But yeah, it's tough, and yet it's so important. It makes you feel so much lighter. Tim posted helpful. Let's see. Karen, always continue to expand, grow. Yes. Sabine, looking forward to the journey and next phase in life. Thank you for the motivation. Thank you, Sabrina. Sorry, Sabrina. Thank you. And I'm so glad it resonated. And as you think about okay, Hip Tranquil Chick turned 13. Where were we 13 years ago? When I was 33 years old, where will we be? God, oh my God, we 59. I mean, that's just amazing, right? Of just these evolutions. We're moving, life keeps moving, and how are we going to go along with it? And I think the biggest thing that I really try to teach and remind people is to skip and avoid that rinse and repeat. Where you get up every day, do the same thing, and then tomorrow is a new day, and yet it's the same thing over and over again. So hitting that pause button, ideally with events like this, or picking up a book that resonates, or going on a retreat, or taking a workshop, something that just refills you and also gives you the pause button to reflect, I think is so powerful. Laura, I loved your advice about small shifts and small phases. Yes. Nothing happens overnight, honey. I think even in this book, I have overnight success and Hip Tranquil Chick, which it's never overnight success, right? It would be an updated edition of Hip Tranquil Chick. I think if I did, it would be a whole other, again, aging. It wouldn't be like the aging Hip Tranquil Chick. I don't know what it would be, but maybe. And if so, I'd love to know what you would like to share. or hear. Thank you for sharing your HTC grown-ups that were really resonated with me. Letting go is tough, but you're trying to. Yes, yes, yes. Shizuka, never easy. Joined in even if you are very late. Join in even if you're very late, because a little is better than none. Melinda, absolutely. And so that means if you want to switch careers, if you want to make a big life change, I mean, I had people in my program that were in their 50s that were like reporters from the Washington Post that were like transitioning into becoming a social worker. I mean, it is never too late. And I think people are constantly reinventing themselves. You know who's the queen of this? Does it so freaking well and is like still like a massive success is Madonna, right? Constantly reinventing. And I love that, Melinda. I think it's such a great reminder. Keep on the straight course while embracing the speed bumps. Yes, Cynthia. Love Hip Trinkle Chick Grows Up. Debbie, I do too. Jane, aging gracefully would be a wonderful book topic. Seeing aging positively. And Robin, I'd love to see another book from you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you guys so much for being here tonight. I really, really appreciate it. A reminder to share your photos. I can't wait to see them over on Instagram. A reminder, if you have a moment to pen a review on Amazon, would be so grateful. Be sure to send me the link to it, hello@KimberlyWilson.com, and I will get you a sparkly Paris postcard out very soon. And then also stay tuned for the 20-minute Tea with Kimberly video that's coming this week. And of course, I'll be sure to share it on the blog, and you can also find it over on the YouTube page. So I just want to say thank you guys so much for sharing your Sunday night with me. It's been an absolute treat. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I love, love, love hearing from you. And here's to another 13 years. Thank you guys so much, and have a wonderful week, an amazing November, and hopefully I'll see you December 29th. Thanks. Bye-bye.